every year where I'm not growing, I'm actively failing.
Contracting, yeah.
There is no stasis. You're never standing in one place. You are either getting bigger or you are getting smaller. So if you've reached that point where you're not getting bigger and there isn't somebody who's able to help you get past that plateau and onto the next level, what do you do?
All right, I think my mic's working, the record button's working, everything appears to be working. Some days it doesn't work, but today it's working the way it's supposed to.
The
We're going
background
to
is all
talk.
set up the right way?
Yep. Now, I do have a question for Polish Falcons, though, in case you are
Yeah,
actually watching,
they're not watching.
although I probably don't think you are. Maybe if you are, you can answer this for me. Nick got a blue shirt. I have a red shirt. Now, I'm not wearing it right now. Does that mean that he outranks me because he's a blue shirt and I'm a red shirt? Well, wait a second.
Could go the other way.
If this was Star Trek, does that mean they gave me a red shirt because they're going to kill me first? Like, I'm really confused about this Polish Falcons shirt color situation I've just wandered into.
It could be very much the other way. Maybe because you are an IMO situation, they give MGA IMO people red shirts, and they give just the workaday street agents blue shirts.
If you, I forget what color blue is on Star Trek anyway. I'd have to go back and check. I don't think it's like science. You're a science person.
Yeah, the science officer, and that one might be like light blue. Like, I don't. Is there a name?
Oh, medical. Dark blue would be medical.
Dark
usually
blue is medical.
Yeah,
makes sense. Field under
sense. Yeah. Health insurance. There you go. And red is command. So maybe Polish Falcons is actually run by Paramount, and we don't know it.
Yeah, that's clearly what we've just found out. It's the Star Trek conspiracy.
Yeah, no, I'm convinced there's a cabal of fraternals that are actually all owned by each other, and when they get enough on their books, they just call themselves something different. I'm convinced of it. Like, you're all using the same application. Stop lying to me. Like,
they are all using the same application these days, aren't they? That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's a great application. God bless it, or whoever they pray to. But what if it's all the same thing?
That would be hilarious. I'm really glad that the small fraternals have all kind of gotten on board with the same application, and it is somewhat disappointing that some of the larger fraternals have not gotten on board with that same application also. But
interesting riddle. You're right.
Yeah, but the large fraternals kind of operate a little bit like the large stock companies, though. So
yeah,
there's not a lot of difference between Foresters and Transamerica at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
They're both just very large corporations.
Yeah, which kind of parlays perfectly into our mini topic for the day. And then we're going to unpack a far more interesting topic. So stay tuned to the end. If you actually care about shit outside of insurance or in addition to insurance or the everything in between part of our title, I think that's going to be a far more interesting topic. But factually or emotionally, I want to unpack the term support.
Yeah.
I was listening to a YouTube video, and I don't think you qualify as a podcast until you all have a microphone. Until then, you're just making a video.
That's right.
I've listened to many of our videos in the past without mics. I'm like, Adam was right. What am I saying?
It's a huge difference when you switch to an actual microphone, isn't it? And like, I got a microphone that I thought at the time was pretty nice, but actually I'm kind of jealous of your Shure microphone. I think that would actually be the way to go. Someday, maybe I'll upgrade, but this works.
Absolutely. So they were talking about the concept of support in the sense of like where you are hierarchically in Medicare, but support seems like such a nebulous term. I've heard it used before where somebody said, I want to go work with a Medicare organization that has a brick and mortar office because they're going to give me more support. When I say that word to you, what does support really mean?
Well, when somebody, I can tell you. So let me take this from the perspective of what I was looking for when I was getting started, and what I had difficulty finding. And I'm trying to keep it away from what I specifically try to offer, but what I was looking for and what I had a hard time finding, which is I was looking for somebody who, if I called, somebody would be able to answer the phone. And the questions that I had usually revolved around, is there a special election period that I can figure out? on the life insurance side, like, how is there a company that will take this person? Um, what are for the Medicare stuff, like, how do I figure out if this doctor is in network? How do I've got to write an app for a company that I've never written before. How do I find their e-app? How do I like navigate this? I'm in a situation where I'm in uncharted territory. I find myself somewhat unprepared accidentally. Like I thought I was ready, but I've run into a prospect that threw me a curveball and I don't know where I need to go and I'm not experienced yet. So, is there somebody who can talk me through this so I can walk out of here with the sale that I know is on the table, but will no longer be on the table if I have to walk away and come back?
Hmm.
And is there somebody who can help me get from I'm in a situation where I'm unfamiliar to I'm submitting an application? And that's what I was looking for in terms of support. Um, and that is hard to find. There's not a lot of people that offer that, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a lot of that out there. A lot of times, if you are an agent and you find yourself in an unfamiliar situation and you're out of your depth, mostly you have to chalk it up to a learning experience and you walk away and you lose the sale and you do better next time. And that sucks, especially when you're new. Especially when you're new and struggling and trying to get your traction. That really sucks. And that was the support that I needed the most. And like I was with an IMO for Medicare who prides themselves on offering support. Like I talked to like the head of their senior sales division remembers me specifically, even though I've only talked to her like 4 times in my entire life, because one of the first conversations I ever had with her, I said, I'm really frustrated because you guys don't offer any kind of support. And she was like, that is shocking. Nobody's ever said that to me before. We pride ourselves on the amount of support that we offer. But the support that they offer is like, here's how you go buy leads. Here's how you get contracted. Here's co-op money. Hey, all of this stuff is great. Um, but what I needed was when I called somebody in their office at 4:45 in the afternoon for them not to have been gone for the day already. When I emailed somebody at their office because I needed a United Healthcare app and I'd only just gotten my ready to sell for United Healthcare at 10 a.m. that morning, and I hadn't figured out how to do an e-app yet, and it was 6 o'clock at night, and I had somebody who I could sell United Healthcare to. I needed somebody to be like, okay, this is how you get on the website. This is how you register. This is how
Oh my
you,
gosh.
right?
Someone just tell me how to access Calculus and write Johns Hopkins. I had that
Right.
question last week. But
Yeah,
but that's not exactly the same kind of support. That's like baseline
it is.
operational stuff. Like, how do I
Absolutely.
get in the house?
What, right. So, and at that point, I'd already knew how to get into the house. Like I had
Mhm.
experience selling, right? But like that baseline operational support is often missing. Let alone sales support, man. The sales training that exists from IMOs goes from non-existent to terrible most of the time. Um, at its best, it's bad. Most of the time. Most of the time, the people that are doing sales training at IMOs have never sold anything
Ever.
ever.
Not even like last week, like
No.
ever.
Most of the time, and like I can always tell when I talk to somebody who has sales experience and somebody who's just a corporate cog. I had a great conversation with the um, regional representative for Aetna that covers Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and I could tell within 10 minutes of speaking to him that he had actually spent time in the field as an agent and that he
Mhm.
knew what it was like to actually sell. Now, I don't sell in that part of the state. I was calling him on behalf of somebody that I'm working with. But it was a great conversation that I had with this guy. And it was because he had sales experience and we could talk the same language and he could talk about like, hey, these are the things that I can do for the agent that you're working with, and this is how I can offer him support, and these are areas that he might want to look into. And it was great. And I talked to somebody else who I won't say where they were the representative, but like, and they were very clearly like, just, what we can do is throw money at the situation. And listen, I love it when you throw money at a situation.
Go
I
right
will
ahead.
take your money all day long and I will do something useful with it. But it's not the same as support,
Hmm.
right? Um, it's not the same as teaching somebody how to ask whether or not they can do a Medicare review, how to do it compliantly, and how to do it effectively. How to say to a prospect who says, "Oh, I've got my Medicare all taken care of," how to still get them to talk to you about Medicare and have it both be compliant and effective. Most people aren't going to teach you how to do that.
I
Most
think that's
people don't
experience
know how.
based. Yeah. I broke research or support down into a couple different categories. We're going to jump through these quickly and then get into our actual topic that I think is far more interesting.
Mm,
Support I wrote down is logistical. How do you log in Sunfire? Like get me a
sure.
Sunfire login. How do I write independence? Like, oh no, you got to do it over here. That's logistical stuff. Support to me is resources. All right, here's a lead program, but that lead program ran short. So here's like two other options. So you've
Yep.
got people to see next week. Resources being here's this, that, and the other thing so you can get your job done. Support to me is also experience based training. It's not just a 1 hour webinar where you essentially have quoted chapter and verse the agent guide. That's not experience based training. But then there's also that whole level of support that it's like, all right, now we have to have a counseling session because something bad happened in life and you're not sure how to go to work tomorrow because this thing happened. That's like,
Yeah.
that's what carriers never appreciate about the mid-level agency to agent relationship that comes in the counseling side of what you do.
Yeah.
And then I feel like support also includes the idea of ongoing business development. I remember part of the reason why I left my original organization wasn't just that the comp was garbage, but that I outgrew the pool I was swimming in. Like I would ask questions like, should I buy more leads and see more people? No, 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 no. No, 20 is fine. Word,
Un- yeah.
word. Like, no, wait a second. I want to see more people. How should I do that?
Um,
Ongoing business development became I wanted to grow an agency, but every time I captured or acquired talent, the talent would be like, F this, I'm not working on a 50. This is ridiculous.
right.
Like that's outgrowing. But support also includes helping someone develop their business past entry level. Because so much of the training and content and conversations is like Medicare 101, Final Expense 101, like we talked about last week. But what next? Like what
Yeah.
happens after I've mastered that? What's the support?
Yeah. No, it's I think that's the business development is, I think, a really underrated aspect of this. There's very little business discussion that goes on in this industry with agents because it's because of the way agents get recruited, right?
Mhm.
Like the way agents get recruited, for the most part, you're recruiting people who are turning to insurance as a last ditch effort. Like most people don't want to go to insurance. Most people don't understand that insurance can be a great career. There's a lot of negative thoughts about insurance. Um, and so teaching people how to build and run and grow a business, and is almost entirely absent for the regular agent, and that is a very underrated level of support, because there is, whether people think about it or not, everybody who gets into this business needs to be getting into this business with an end game in mind. At some point, you want to be able to retire.
Mhm.
Now, that end game may be 30 years from now. That may be 50 years from now, depending on how old you are. Maybe you're 22. Uh, you're okay with working until you're 72. But at some point, there's an end game. And you need to be working towards that end game and setting yourself personal goals, 2-year goals, 3-year goals, 5-year goals, 20-year goals, with benchmarks that you're approaching and hitting. And it's all well and good to say, my goal is to get to where I'm writing 300 Medicare apps a year. My goal is to get to where I'm writing $200,000 of final expense in a year. My goal is to be making $250,000 a year. But then when you hit that goal, what's next?
I think that comes from the fact that most agents fail, like 99%
Yeah.
probably fail. I had a recruiting conversation with the guy that sounds like he's got everything it takes, but I straight up said to him, honestly, I've had this talk probably 800 times and two people become something from it statistically. I'm embellishing,
Yeah.
but But he's talking about wanting to build, wanting to do annuities, wanting to do Medicare. I'm like, why don't we start with like the first date stuff? You're talking about wanting to buy your second house and the third kid and the vacation property, but we're like dating. Like,
Yeah.
let's reel this shit in for a second
Yeah.
here in a good way. But that's like so many agents get into the business in survival mode, which both of us. Then once they figured out stability, then they're never taught what's next. Like, so they keep operating in survival mode until they burn themselves out. And then they get distracted by a shiny object and they're out of the business. When you could just simply give them like, all right, here's what's next. Here's what's next. Here's your end game. You want to be able to package it up and sell it to private equity or have it all properly organized to pass it to a descendant.
Mhm.
Like some kind of like cohesive thing that exists, not just this nebulous buy leads and bang doors philosophy that you started with 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All of those things.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think that's like perfect. Like
So
we need there needs to be and I know we're not offering solutions right here. I think it's too big a conversation to offer solutions on a YouTube channel.
mhm.
But it is a thing that I'm hoping makes people think. I'm hoping anybody who's watching this who hasn't been thinking in this way, who hasn't been thinking, every year where I'm not growing, I'm actively failing.
Contracting, yeah.
There is no stasis. You're never standing in one place. You are either getting bigger or you are getting smaller. So if you've reached that point where you're not getting bigger and there isn't somebody who's able to help you get past that plateau and onto the next level, what do you do? So hopefully people who are watching this who are in that place, and I know I actually expect that most of the people that watch this are more in that place than they are in the beginning place,
Mm-hmm.
that they start maybe thinking this way, and that if you haven't been thinking this way, that this sparks something.
Yeah, I think that the way I look at it is kind of twofold, and we'll get into our next topic. We got 15 minutes for it.
Yeah.
Back in 2022, I had a good friend killed on vacation in a car accident at 40 years old.
Yeah.
And it kind of influenced a ton of decisions from that point on, at least for the next 12 to 18 months after that, where I'm like, you know what? I am going to buy a Jeep. What if I get killed in a car accident? I never got the experience of owning the Jeep. I'm absolutely going to buy it.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do this and do that. Like, because you realize in those moments that you may not have the future to be able to experience them. But then you kind of work your way back to the mean and you say to yourself, I also don't want to have a retirement that consists of being a final expense client. Like, I do not want to, like, I want to be able to enjoy functionally in a healthy capacity, if I live to that age, some kind of back end to the life, not to the point where I'm still thinking to myself, I wish I should have, would have, could have done this. So I think the conversation can kind of be packaged up into saying, when you reach a level of stability in the business, awesome. Now let's figure out where to continue to develop that to the point you don't become your own client. Agreed?
100% agreed.
So I was watching a podcast from Lex Friedman. I think I got the name right. And he was interviewing Andrew Bustamante, a CIA guy who's made the podcast rounds. Maybe you've seen him, maybe you haven't. And he spent about 10 years, I think, in the CIA. And at one point during the interview, he was discussing how he was stationed with General Petraeus. And his commanding officer told him, never ask General Petraeus about his family. And he goes and he asks the guy about his family. and I'm paraphrasing. You guys should watch the podcast. It's very interesting. When he's talking to General Petraeus about family and the fact that while he was supporting his country and supporting his soldiers and supporting the mission overseas, he missed so much of the family moments in life. And Andrew goes on to talk about how everybody in that theater of life misses things. Even business people miss things. But it isn't always like the big things. Sometimes it's like the compilation of little things that you might miss in like that kind of pile up as well. Like, where I'm trying to go with this is, once you reach this level of stability in the industry, it takes sacrifice to get there. Agree or disagree?
Absolutely.
And you're going to have to miss some things. You can't go to every baseball game and every this and every that to get to that point. You're going to have to give up some things to get there. But once you get there, I think people are challenged over finding out the difference between the hustle and thinking you got to all have $1 million in the bank, or being present enough in your life, your family's life, your kids' life, that they don't care if there's $5 million in the bank if they never freaking see you. You kind of see where I'm trying to go with this conversation.
Yeah. So like, yeah, I know exactly where you're going with this conversation. I want to try and figure out how I want to say this. Like, at a certain point, an extra $500,000, an extra $1 million, an extra amount of money in your bank account isn't actually going to move the needle on your life that much anymore. And I know that sounds like that's for a lot of people is not the reality, but like at a certain point that becomes a reality.
Yeah.
And what you do with that money and what you do with that time is more important. Um at the end of the day, I sell insurance because I want to be able to say, hey, I'm making it to all of my kids' doctor's appointments. I'm making it to my daughter's dance recitals. I'm making it, she fences now. I'm making it to all of her fencing tournaments. And I can do that. I talked about on the crossover episode, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before with Adam, like I don't leave the house if I don't have 6 appointments booked, and I'm mostly in the field 1 to 2 days a week these days. But like that is something that I have earned. When I started, my wife tells a story because she posted about it on Facebook. And the wonderful thing about Facebook is memories pop up. And so she tells a story that like every couple of years, this Facebook memory pops up from 2013, where she's like, Nick got to come home today and he spent 14 hours asleep. And I'm just so glad that like he had the opportunity to sleep, because I was waking up at 6 in the morning and getting home at 9 at night, 6 days a week. And on Sundays, I was on the phone from 10 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, making sure that I had people to go to see from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, the rest of the week. And that some of that included like sales meetings and travel time. And it's like I wasn't sitting with people the entire time, but I was working around the clock, going to sales trainings, learning how to sell, walking down the street, knocking on doors, cold calling people, um, putting in the time, putting in the hours. And I was never home. But I did that for a couple of years and I learned a skill. And I got really good at it because I had to, because if I didn't, we would be homeless. So I got really good at it. And now I don't have to be. Right? I mean, I'm still good at it, but like I don't have to put in that kind of time anymore. Right? You put in the time, you pay your dues with the goal of not having to work that hard. The hustle culture is so sad to me. The idea that people are proud of the fact that they're grinding instead, that they're working 3 and 4 jobs instead of having a life. Like, have a life. Like, even me, I'm a bad example of this because like I went to a marketing conference a couple weeks back, where it was just talking about like advertising and building Facebook ads and doing digital marketing. And I'm trying to work on a couple of things, and I've got some ideas that I'm experimenting with and working on. A lot of stuff with AI and whatnot. But I was talking to a guy there, and he was like, so like outside of insurance, what do you do for fun? And I had to actually sit and like think for a while. And like, what the hell do I do for fun? Like, I make podcasts about insurance.
Mhm.
I like most of my friends are in the insurance industry at this point. Like, I do some religious stuff. Like, I read books. I watch a lot of TV, I guess. Mostly I hang out with my family. Like, that's what I do for fun. What I do when I'm not working is spend time with my family. And that's really all I want to do. And yeah, I should probably have more of a life than that. That's maybe not healthy. But like we've started going to rock concerts and plays on a regular basis because we can afford to, and it's good for my wife and I to get out and talk about things that are not business related. But like Yeah,
I
have a
think
work-life balance, like, have a life.
I think what you said is so key to the concept of once you've reached a spot, recognizing that 50, $100,000, maybe more in the bank doesn't really move the needle once the needle is set on stability. Like
Yeah.
the leads are paid for, the mortgage is good, the emergency fund is established, retirement accounts are being funded, you're properly and overly insured. Like, but then like that's a spot you got to figure out that success isn't a place you're going to arrive at one Thursday afternoon. It's like a journey. Success isn't a linear progression that you go on. It's like, oh, all right, here we go. But it's more like finding that stable point in business. And this is my opinion in May 3rd of 2024. Correct. 5 years from now, we might review that question. Stability is a point where you're like, all right, let's breathe a little bit. Let's do other things. Let's live other things. Yes, the trip might cost this much. That's like this much in applications to make back. Like when it's all said and done, and you're 68 years old, and you're like, mildly chronically ill, you're gonna look back and say, look at all that premium I wrote 16 years ago, or you're gonna look at the overall view of the experiences in the life and the children you hopefully raised into being semi-functional adults. Like that's part of your like job too. Like if you
Yeah.
reproduced other people, like you got to get them to a point where they're also not final expense clients too.
Yeah. What's the point, right? Like, and like, seriously, think about it. If you're watching this, for all 12 of you, 12 of you who do,
Maybe
um,
30.
yeah. But if you're watching this, like, what's the point? Why are you doing this? You like God, and it's such a simple thing. Like it's the most basic of things, right? Like the first day in sales training school when I was with Combined Insurance, and they sent me to Chicago and went to sales training school, and they made us write vision boards. And the first question they asked is, why are you doing this? Why are you coming here and doing what is going to be a very psychologically taxing job? They were never shy about, like, this is going to be hard work. You're going to have to put in a lot of effort. So why are you doing it? If you don't have an answer to that, you better get an answer to that. You will not succeed long term unless you have an answer to that.
Because then it's going to come a point where you've got enough money that you need a bigger why than paying your bills.
Yeah.
And then once you've gotten to that point, you kind of reach this stability conversation we've had, over the course of several episodes, kind of in a longer format today. And I think one of the other challenges people face, because if they're watching this, they're involved in social media and Facebook and YouTube and such, is there's the hustle culture, but there's also the fake AF culture. Like Sean Mike said recently, you didn't used to have to think if that person was really successful because you could see it. All right, that's a decent house. This is a nice car. Things look like it's got itself together. It can be so fake online that you don't know the numbers behind the person. Like you don't know that this person's on their 4th IMO in 3 years and they don't have any more people than you do production wise. And you're thinking to themselves, they're so much better than you when you're probably on an equal playing field. Like I think that it's such
With
a
their
challenge for
rented
people
Lamborghini and fake fistfuls of cash.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they're on their 6th convention in 5 weeks and they come home to an empty house and drink themselves to sleep because they haven't built a life outside of this. Like there's more to this too, isn't there?
Yeah. No, there's got to be. There's got to be. I mean, and like, yeah. Yeah. So
There
I
we
don't know.
go.
I think it all ties back. Like I feel like this ties into the business development, which ties into the support, and like, are you getting the support at home? Are you being supportive to your family? Are like
Mhm. Are you being the
do
support? That's a
are
good
you
one.
yeah, are you able to provide the support? Like what like it's got to be a holistic thing. It's not a little bit, and that goes from the people that you choose to partner with to the people in your life to the people that you take care of. It all pulls together. It is a lifestyle job.
Mhm.
Um if you have downline agents, how you support and take care of them. It's all one piece. You got to look at the big picture.
Yeah, because there's going to come a point, like we said, where it's all kind of done
Yeah.
in one way or another. And you're going to sit and look back and say, oh, the summation of all that I've done, do you feel good about it? Do you feel all right about it? Or do you look back and say, I did all of this, but I have nothing tangibly to show for it? It's a big, big thought we encourage you to have today. If any of this you took away something useful, like, comment, and subscribe. We just crossed the threshold. I was excited to cross 450. And these are 450 real people. They're not bots. They're not overseas clicks. They're not fake AF, as we discussed. Real people, real organic growth. And we continue to do that literally in a little bit every single day, thanks to you guys. So if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. And if all you had to do was listen and you weren't subjected to watching, follow on that podcast platform as well. Nick, appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you. Talk to you next time.